I am Thomas Bennett, 47 years old, once the vice president of operations at Warner Construction, my wife's family's construction company. 22 years of dedication, 70-hour work weeks, dozens of million-dollar contracts, and all my passion built the buildings that shaped Seattle's skyline. But it all crumbled in 15 seconds, through a voicemail my wife Rachel played for me. Warner Construction wasn't just my workplace. It was the legacy I chose, the second home I built with sweat and heart over 22 years. I grew up in the suburbs of Seattle, in an ordinary family where my father was a plumber, and my mother a teacher. As a kid, I loved sketching blueprints, imagining buildings that soared yet blended with nature. I studied architecture at the University of Washington, graduated with honors, and got a job offer from a major firm in New York. But then I met Rachel Warner, the girl whose smile made me forget the world. When we got engaged, her father, William Warner, invited me to join Warner Construction. "You've got talent, Thomas," he said, "but if you want to be part of this family, you build with us." I turned down New York, married Rachel, and stepped into the Warner world.
Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video.
The early days weren't easy. Warner Construction back then was a small home building company in Seattle, founded by William 35 years ago with a pickup truck and a few tools. I started as a project manager, determined to prove I wasn't just the boss's daughter's husband. I arrived at sites before dawn, learned to read complex blueprints, and didn't shy away from getting muddy with the crew. The teams began to respect me, not because I was a Warner-in-law, but because I knew the job and was willing to do anything I asked of them. Rachel back then was my biggest supporter. She worked in the company's finance department, always backing my ideas for sustainable building. We'd sit for hours dreaming of turning Warner Construction into a leading name not just in Seattle but across the Pacific Northwest. When our son Jake was born, I found even more drive. I wanted to build a legacy not just for the Warner family, but for Jake, a strong company, responsible to the environment. At 35, I was promoted to operations manager. I introduced cost-saving initiatives, like optimizing the supply chain, saving the company tens of thousands of dollars annually. William, with his silver-streaked hair but still sharp eyes, patted my shoulder. "You're doing great, Thomas. This company will be yours, and Rachel's one day." I believed him, completely. Why wouldn't I? I'd poured everything into Warner Construction. 4 years ago, I was appointed vice president of operations. Under my leadership, the company expanded from homes to commercial projects, offices, schools, community libraries. Revenue doubled in 5 years, thanks to my strategy, sustainable building. I researched recycled materials, solar power systems, and energy-efficient designs. Warner Construction started appearing in industry magazines as a pioneer in the Pacific Northwest. My proudest project was Warner Eco Commons, a sustainable urban development in downtown Seattle. I envisioned it as a symbol: energy-efficient apartments above retail shops, with green roofs, rainwater collection systems, and community spaces for residents. William handed me the golden shovel at the groundbreaking ceremony, in front of hundreds. "This is your baby, Thomas," he said, voice full of pride, "the future of Warner Construction." I gripped the shovel, feeling its weight, and believed the path ahead was clear. But family wasn't always harmonious. Rachel, though once my partner, began to distance herself. She grew busier with board meetings, where she held a share of the company. Her father, William, remained the final decision-maker, but I noticed he often favored Daniel, Rachel's brother. Daniel worked in sales, had a knack for charming clients, but lacked attention to detail. I often had to fix his promises that crews couldn't deliver, or quotes that weren't feasible. William always defended him. "He'll grow into it, Thomas. Not everyone starts fast like you." Still, I trusted William's promise. "One day, this company will be yours and Rachel's, with Daniel as a shared legacy." I spent my life ensuring that legacy thrived. Every building I constructed was a piece of that dream. A library with a unique curved facade, an apartment complex that won a design award, an elementary school finished early so kids could return to class. I wasn't just building houses, I was building the future. I realized I'd ignored warning signs for months. The cracks in Warner Construction's foundation, and in my marriage, didn't appear suddenly. They formed gradually, so subtly I didn't notice until everything collapsed. Looking back, I see moments I should have questioned, but my trust in my wife's family and passion for work blinded me. Things started changing about 3 months ago. I was preparing for a quarterly meeting at Warner Construction's Seattle headquarters. I'd spent weeks perfecting a presentation on expanding recycled material use across all projects, including Warner Eco Commons. The numbers backed me. Our sustainable builds drew premium clients and earned press praise. But as I began presenting, William, my father-in-law, interrupted, glancing at his watch. "Table this for now, Thomas," he said flatly. "We have more pressing matters." He didn't explain what pressing meant. I nodded. but unease crept in. That same week, I noticed Rachel change. My wife, who once stayed up late discussing company strategy with me, now avoided work talks. She frequently lunched with Daniel, her brother, and William at a restaurant near the office. I didn't think much of it at first. They were family. Such lunches were normal. But when I passed by, they stopped talking, and William just waved. Just family stuff, Thomas. I smiled, but the feeling of exclusion grew. Then Charles Donovan appeared. William introduced him as a strategic consultant, an old college friend. Charles, with silver hair and a forced smile, quickly settled into the company. He reviewed contracts, questioned processes, and scrutinized my client relationships. Just a general assessment, he said when I asked. But I wasn't allowed to see his reports. When I asked William, he replied, "They're still in progress, Thomas. Don't worry." But I did. A recycled material supplier I'd chosen for Warner Eco Commons was abruptly dropped. A marketing campaign I designed for the project was postponed indefinitely. Every time I sought explanations, the answer was, "We're reassessing." The tension peaked one afternoon when I walked into the conference room and saw William, Rachel, Daniel, Charles, and 2 board members reviewing blueprints. They were Warner Eco Commons designs, but altered. The solar power system and rainwater collection, core elements the city approved, were gone. "What's going on?" I asked, unable to hide my frustration. William looked up, briefly startled. "Just exploring cost optimization, Thomas. Nothing final." Charles cut in smoothly. "These features may not yield the expected returns." I countered. "I ran those numbers. They're viable, and materials are already ordered." William stood. "We'll discuss later, Thomas. Charles has experience. You should listen." I left the meeting, feeling like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. That evening, my assistant Lisa pulled me aside to a park near the office. She looked nervous, eyes darting as if afraid of being seen. "I shouldn't say this," she whispered, "but they've been holding closed meetings almost daily when you're at sites. Rachel, Daniel, Mr. Warner, and Charles. And someone else, Ethan Donovan, Charles's son. They've interviewed him, showed him around the office, even yours." I tried to stay calm. "Interviewed for what?" Lisa shook her head. "They didn't specify, but it felt like he was already hired." I tried to convince myself it was just adding staff for expansion. But why the secrecy? Why didn't Rachel tell me? That weekend I went to William and Rachel's for our monthly family dinner. Rachel was glued to her phone, avoiding my gaze. When William stepped out for a call, she pulled me aside. "Thomas, be careful. My dad, he's under a lot of pressure." "What pressure?" I asked. She shook her head, then William returned, and she switched to talking about Jake's school. As I left, Rachel hugged me longer than usual, like she was saying goodbye. The next week, I was excluded from a business dinner with a major client. When I asked Rachel, she said, "Just a casual meeting, not a big deal." But I learned they'd signed a preliminary deal for a luxury condo project, a type I'd warned was risky due to market saturation. Each event alone could be a coincidence, but together they painted a picture I didn't want to admit. I was being pushed out of the company I'd helped build. That day started like any other in Seattle, drizzly and gray. I just finished a meeting with Greenway Developers, a major client with potential to sign a contract for Warner Eco Commons. The meeting went perfectly. Martin, the CEO, shook my hand, eyes gleaming. "Thomas, your passion for sustainable building is exactly what we're looking for. Warner is the ideal partner." I left the meeting buoyant. This contract would bring in millions and prove my vision, buildings that were sustainable and inspired communities. I called Rachel to share the news, but got her voicemail. Deciding to treat myself, I stopped at a familiar coffee shop in downtown Seattle, ordered a large latte, and settled by the window. I was checking emails when my phone buzzed. Rachel texted, "Can you come home now? It's important." Thinking it might involve our son Jake, I rushed back. When I walked in, Rachel stood in the living room, phone in hand, her face strangely cold. Without a greeting, she said, "My dad left this message for you." She pressed play, and William's voice came through, rigid. "Thomas, you're out of Warner Construction. Your access is revoked. Don't come to the office. This is final." The message ended. I stood frozen, as if punched in the chest. Rachel looked at me, said nothing, then turned away, leaving me alone with the deafening silence. 22 years of dedication, sleepless nights, projects I poured my heart into, all gone in 15 seconds. I took my phone, typed one word, "Understood." I hit send, not to agree, but to deny them the sight of me breaking. Rachel glanced at the screen, then left the room. I heard the bedroom door close. I couldn't stay in that house a minute longer. I got in my car and drove aimlessly through the Seattle rain. I passed the projects I'd built, the community library with its curved glass roof, the award-winning apartment complex. The elementary school finished early so kids could return to class. Each building was a chapter in my story, milestones of passion and dedication. Now they stood like gravestones for what I'd lost. I stopped at the Warner Eco Commons site, staring at the sign proclaiming sustainable urban living that I'd designed. How could they erase me so easily? Sitting in the car, rain streaking down the windshield, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if my heart were being squeezed. I thought of Jake, 15, preparing for college. How would I pay tuition with no income? How could I face him when his own mother sided with her family to betray me? I could call William back, demand a meeting, or storm the office to get answers. But I did nothing. Understood was the only strength I had left, the strength to not let them see me weak. The first day after the shock, I woke up empty. Out of habit, I reached for my phone to check work emails, only to see access denied flashing on the screen. I tried the company credit card for my morning coffee, but the transaction was declined. I drove to Warner Construction's headquarters, hoping to confront William, but my keycard wouldn't open the gate. The security guard who used to greet me every morning shook his head. "Sorry, Mr. Bennett, I'm just following orders." I stood outside the building, Seattle's rain soaking my coat, feeling like I'd been wiped from my own life. Finances quickly became a problem. The spacious house where I, Rachel, and Jake lived was now a burden. With Rachel's income from company shares, she could stay, but I couldn't. I moved to a tiny studio apartment in Seattle's suburbs, where traffic noise seeped through the walls every night. I calculated my savings would last a few months, but Jake's upcoming college costs and bills kept me awake. I thought of my son, at that sensitive age of 15. How could I explain that his dad was ousted by his mom and grandfather? My reputation was systematically destroyed. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from clients and colleagues, but not for comfort. Martin from Greenway Developers texted, "Thomas, hearing odd things about you. Call me." Suppliers I'd built relationships with over years asked, "Is it true you left Warner?" I couldn't respond. What could I say? That my wife stood by as her family erased me. A non-compete clause in my contract barred me from contacting Warner's clients. I became a nameless ghost in the construction industry. My wife's family cut off all contact. I called Rachel, but got voicemail. I tried William's home line. No one answered. I even texted Daniel, though we were never close, but got no reply. It felt like I died, and no one bothered with a funeral. Jake was the only one still talking to me, but he avoided mentioning his mom or the company, as if afraid to touch the wound. Our conversations grew shorter, filled with uneasy silences. By the fifth day, I couldn't stand the silence. I texted Lisa, my former assistant, asking to meet at a small diner far from downtown Seattle. Lisa arrived, nervous, glancing over her shoulder like she feared being spotted. "I'm not supposed to talk to you," she said immediately, clutching a napkin. They made everyone sign NDAs about the transition. I pressed her for the truth. Lisa sighed, voice trembling. "That afternoon you left for the Greenway meeting. They called an all-hands. William announced the company was returning to its roots, focusing on luxury condos. Then he introduced Ethan Donovan, Charles's son, as the new VP of operations. It started to click. What else?" I asked. Lisa hesitated. "They said you'd chosen to pursue other opportunities. All communication now goes through Ethan or Daniel, and they're dismantling everything you built. The sustainability initiatives, community partnerships, diverse hiring policies, all scrapped. Warner Eco Commons has been redesigned. No green features, just luxury condos with sky-high prices." I felt stabbed in the heart. Why, Lisa? Those initiatives were profitable. They set Warner apart. She lowered her voice. "Charles convinced William luxury condos bring faster cash, fewer regulations, and..." I overheard William mention something about his health, about treatment options. William's health? I was stunned. Why didn't anyone tell me? Lisa didn't know details, just snippets of private talks. When she left, I stayed at the diner, piecing together fragments. Charles Donovan had manipulated William, exploiting his health fears to push me out. Daniel, always jealous of his father's trust in me, surely helped. And Rachel, she didn't just know, she was complicit. I started investigating. I called an old friend now at a rival construction firm. He confirmed. Word is Warner's pivoting to luxury condos, and there's talk of financial trouble. Someone said William's looking to sell controlling interest. Financial trouble? I'd checked the books weeks ago. Everything was solid. I made a timeline, Charles's arrival, secret meetings, my sidelining, Ethan's presence. This wasn't a snap decision. It was a calculated plot, months in the making, while I worked tirelessly to grow the company. Back at my apartment, I found 4 boxes delivered from Warner Construction. Inside were the remnants of my career. Family photos, industry awards, a plant I'd kept alive for 5 years, diplomas taken off the wall. At the bottom was a legal document, a severance agreement waiving all claims for 3 months' pay. A sticky note in William's handwriting, sign in return for payment. I let the paper fall, feeling like I held my own will. I'd lost not just my job but my family, reputation, and the future I once believed was mine. Proof of my collapse. My reputation smeared, finances drained, and family. Rachel, William, Daniel turned their backs as if I never existed. One rainy night, sitting on my apartment floor, holding a wine bottle, and scrolling through old photos. Warner Eco Commons groundbreaking, crew celebrations, my family and Rachel smiling in Seattle sunshine. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but some lingering hope made me pick up. Thomas Bennett, I said, voice hoarse from sleeplessness. Thomas, it's Sarah Mitchell, the voice came, warm but firm. Sarah owned a small community development firm, Mitchell Community Builders. We'd collaborated 2 years ago on a low-income housing project, winning awards for innovative design on a tight budget. I've been trying to reach you for weeks, she said. Your email's dead and your company line's blocked. I apologized, claiming I was transitioning work, unwilling to admit the bitter truth. Sarah got to the point. I've heard rumors about you and Warner, but I don't care. What I know is you're the best I've ever worked with. I have a proposal, she explained. Her firm had won a bid for a community center in East Seattle, with a tight budget and high sustainability demands. I thought of you right away, Thomas. You can do this. I hesitated. Warner's non-compete clause barred me from their clients, and I wasn't ready to re-enter the industry. Sarah, I appreciate it, but I'm not sure. She cut me off. My lawyer reviewed your contract. This project doesn't violate it. It's a different segment, and you'd be a consultant, not a competitor's employee. Think about it. We start preliminary design in 2 weeks. After the call, I stared at the phone, feeling like I stood before a door I wasn't sure I had the courage to open. The thought of building again, not just a structure, but my career and identity, made my heart race. But fear of failure, at 47 with a son depending on me, held me back. The next morning, I called Sarah back and agreed, but I didn't just want to consult. I wanted to create something of my own. I registered Horizon Green Solutions, a consulting firm specializing in sustainable building. The name Horizon evoked a new skyline, where I could see beyond what Warner allowed. I spent the day building a simple website, ordering business cards, reading Thomas Bennett, founder and principal consultant. Each small step, registering the business, opening a bank account, felt like laying a brick in my new foundation. But I knew Sarah's community center project would determine if Horizon Green Solutions could stand. I dove into work with energy I didn't know I still had. I researched affordable sustainable materials, like reclaimed wood from abandoned warehouses, and locally made eco-bricks. I designed passive energy systems, like south-facing windows to maximize natural light and cut heating costs. I worked late, drafting plans on my cramped kitchen table, checking every figure to keep the project within budget. Some nights, I wondered if I was fooling myself, if a middle-aged man freshly fired could start over. But each time, I thought of Jake, his proud eyes when I showed him job sites years ago, and kept going. The day I presented the design to the East Seattle Community Board, I faced a skeptical group, burned by big firms before. I pitched a community center with a green roof, rainwater collection for a community garden, and interiors from recycled materials, all within a $1.2 million budget. When I finished, the room was silent, then erupted in applause. A board member, Clara, approached. We've tried this for years, but big firms ignored our budget or green goals. You did both. Her words were a tonic, confirming I still had worth. The project finished ahead of schedule, under budget, and exceeded energy standards. At the opening, I stood among the crowd, watching kids play in a playground made from recycled tires, families gathering under the green roof. I touched the freshly poured concrete wall, still warm, and recalled William's lesson. Everything needs a solid foundation. He meant buildings, but I realized it applied to life. I was building a new foundation, not of concrete, but of integrity and resilience. After the project, Horizon Green Solutions' reputation spread. Small Seattle firms reached out, asking about consulting for affordable housing or green schools. I hired a young assistant, Maya, to manage my schedule and considered a small office. Each new contract was a step forward, but I knew the road was long. I was no longer a VP with a 100-person team, but a startup founder facing risks daily. Yet for the first time in months, I felt hope, not to reclaim what I'd lost, but to build a future that was mine. As Horizon Green Solutions began to take hold, I thought I'd left Warner Construction behind. The East Seattle Community Center project not only restored my confidence but also opened new opportunities. But the past doesn't let go easily. One day, as I prepared for a consulting session, my phone buzzed with Rachel's name. After over a year of silence, her voice stunned me. She asked to meet, and that meeting led to a confrontation I both craved and feared, not just with her, but with her father, William, and the truth about what happened. Rachel arranged to meet at a small coffee shop in Seattle suburbs, far from Warner Construction's office. When I arrived, she looked exhausted, her once glossy hair disheveled, her eyes lacking their former spark. She hugged me, longer than usual, and whispered, "Thomas, I'm sorry. This wasn't what I wanted. I sat down, keeping my distance, waiting for her to explain. Dad's not well, she began, voice trembling. He had heart failure, needed emergency surgery. The doctors say recovery will be tough. I froze. William was sick? Why didn't anyone tell me? Rachel looked at the table, avoiding my eyes. Charles Donovan convinced Dad you were plotting to take over the company, that you'd use his illness to push Daniel out. I laughed bitterly. Rachel, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I gave 22 years to Warner. Everything I did was to strengthen your dad's company. She nodded, eyes red. I know, but Charles had proof. Emails, meeting notes, client talks about new leadership. Dad believed you were preparing a power grab. I stiffened. Those weren't real, Rachel. Someone fabricated them. She sighed. Charles framed it to scare Dad. And Daniel, he helped Charles. He was always jealous that Dad trusted you more. The truth emerged, like a distorted painting. Charles Donovan had exploited William's fears about his health and legacy to manipulate him. He brought in his son Ethan to replace me, convincing William that luxury condos were the fastest way to secure the family's finances. Rachel admitted she knew about the plan but didn't stop it, fearing it would hurt her father. Why a voicemail, Rachel? I asked, voice heavy. After everything, why couldn't you tell me face to face? She looked away. Dad was afraid to confront you. You're persuasive, Thomas. He feared you'd make him change his mind. I left the coffee shop with mixed emotions. Part of me wanted to forgive Rachel, but another couldn't erase the image of her standing there playing the voicemail without a word in my defense. A few days later, Rachel called again. Dad wants to see you. He's in the hospital. I hesitated, but agreed. William was my father-in-law, the man who once trusted me, and though he betrayed me, I couldn't turn away as he faced death. The hospital room was dim, thick with antiseptic. William looked frail in bed, tubes and wires everywhere. Rachel sat beside him, holding his hand. Daniel was absent, no surprise. As I entered, William's eyes opened, glinting with recognition and a touch of shame. Thomas, he whispered, voice weak. You came. I nodded, silent. He coughed softly. Rachel helped him sip water. I did something unforgivable, he said. I let fear take over. Fear of losing control, of the company changing, of becoming useless. I didn't deny it. Yes, you did. William looked away. Charles played on those fears. He made me believe you wanted to push me out, turn Warner into something I wouldn't recognize. Now I know I was wrong. Warner's struggling, Thomas. Without you, we're not the same. Part of me wanted to savor this admission, but it only brought emptiness. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, but I have my own company now. Horizon Green Solutions is growing. A flicker of pride crossed William's eyes. I heard. You're doing what I couldn't. Evolving, adapting. We talked for nearly an hour, not just about work but family, mistakes repeated across generations. William shared how his father once ousted a partner for fear of losing control. I realized he hadn't just betrayed me. He'd followed a deep-rooted family pattern. There was no clear apology, but I sensed regret in his voice. I didn't fully forgive, but I accepted he'd acted from fear, not malice. As I left the hospital, Rachel walked me to the hallway. I'll try talking to Dad when he's stronger, she said. But we both knew it was too late to fix things. Our marriage, though not officially over, was irreparably cracked. For Jake, we agreed to keep a peaceful relationship, but I needed distance to protect myself. I declined to return to Warner Construction, though they offered consulting work, but I agreed to assist with a small project, as a way to close that chapter. Not for them but for me to prove I'd moved on. Horizon Green Solutions was my new legacy, and I wouldn't let Warner pull me back. 2 years later, the company I built from the ashes of betrayal was nominated at the Sustainable Building Conference for Innovation in Community Design for the East Seattle Community Center. When the host announced, and the winner is Horizon Green Solutions, the applause roared like validation for the hardest journey of my life. I held the crystal trophy, looked at the audience and realized, understood wasn't surrender, it was the start of a chapter I wrote myself. This success didn't come easily. At 47, starting a business was a gamble. Some nights I lay awake, worrying about bills, whether I could compete with big firms or what Jake, my son, would think of his dad if I failed. But every new contract, every client thank you was a brick in my new foundation. I was Thomas Bennett, a middle-aged man starting over, with passion and experience as my weapons. In my acceptance speech at the conference, I thanked Sarah Mitchell for believing in me when no one else did. I thanked the East Seattle board for giving me a chance to prove myself. And I dedicated the award to those who must start anew when old foundations crumble. If you've been betrayed, lost everything, know you can rebuild, I said. Not the path you planned, but the one you need. I scanned the audience, part of me hoping to see Rachel or William, but they weren't there. Warner Construction had withdrawn from sustainability events, chasing short-term profits. But I didn't need them to feel victory. Today, standing at a new job site, wearing a hard hat with the Horizon Green Solutions logo, I feel grateful, not for the betrayal, but for the lesson it brought. Losing Warner Construction, I found my true path. Pushed out, I found myself. I'm no longer the Warner in-law, bound by their legacy. I'm Thomas Bennett, building sustainable structures, not just for Seattle, but for Jake's future and generations to come. Thomas Bennett's story and my wife revealed the voicemail, "You're out of the family business." I only replied understood, reflects real challenges many in the U.S. face today: betrayal, job loss, and the pressure to redefine oneself in midlife. In America, where culture prizes individual success and financial stability, Thomas's firing from Warner Construction after 22 years, especially by his wife's family, underscores the fragility of trust in family and work relationships. His move from a spacious Seattle home to a small apartment, worrying about Jake's college tuition, mirrors widespread fears about financial security, especially as living costs soar in cities like Seattle. Charles Donovan's manipulation, exploiting William's health fears, evokes a reality many Americans face: being used in competitive workplaces where profit often trumps ethics. The lesson from Thomas's story is, resilience isn't just rising from failure, but building a new legacy on personal values. When Thomas founded Horizon Green Solutions, he not only reclaimed his career, but affirmed his passion for sustainable building, aligning with modern U.S. trends toward environmental consciousness. His understood response symbolizes maintaining dignity in adversity, a vital lesson in American culture, where self-reliance is valued. For those facing job loss or betrayal, the story urges seeking opportunities in fields matching your passion, as Thomas did with Sarah Mitchell, and not letting the past define your future. Start small, like Thomas with a website and business cards, but persist, as he proved. A solid foundation, whether a building or a life, is built from integrity and courage to face challenges. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to rebuilding with Horizon Green Solutions. Hit subscribe to hear more stories of resilience. See you in the next video, where I'll share how to overcome obstacles to forge your own future.